Jim Bull, and I'm from Lincoln Park, Michigan. And then I work on the board of the Kirtland's Warbler Alliance, which is trying to raise people's awareness about the bird. And legislators have asked us, well, shouldn't the Kirtlands be the state bird?
Change the state bird? Jim, how could you? We're a robin state, right?
The robin, wonderful bird, but it's in all 48 of the lower states. The Kirtland's warbler nests almost exclusively in Michigan. There are some in Wisconsin now, and there were like one pair in Ontario, but most of them nest right here.
So tell me, what is your question about the state bird as it stands?
Why do people not know that the robin is not our state bird?
And why not the Cortland's warbler?
Exactly.
This is On Hand, a podcast that's here to answer all of your questions about all of the things that make us uniquely Michigander. I'm April Baer. Today, why is Michigan's state bird the American robin? And why not, as Jim suggests, the Kirtland's warbler, or any other bird thing else for that matter? Okay, here's where we're going to start. We're going to get a couple of arguments in favor of these two birds, why they should be designated Michigan's state bird. First up, in defense of our current representative, the American robin. It's an easy one to spot, even if you're not a birder. Bright yellow beak in a permanent, judgy kind of frown. Resting bird face, you might say. Rusty red belly, brownish gray wings. They make nests all over our houses, and they hop all over our backyards, plucking earthworms from the soil with ease. Their puffy babies look like disgruntled little toddlers. There's just something friendly about them.
It's a bird that you're likely to see just about everywhere. And one thing I tell people to look out is those droopy wings that often along the side of the bird that droop down. They remind me of someone with an ill-fitting coat.
I never thought about that, but they do, don't they?
Yes.
April Campbell is a retired MD and a bird enthusiast who lives in Ann Arbor.
I find that actually, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know a lot about the robin. When I've taken people out on hikes, and particularly people from the city, and they're looking at these birds, they don't know much about the robin. They know that it's a robin, but they don't know what kind of food it eats, how it lives. I mean, robins, they have very strong sight fidelity, and there have been some really crazy stories about robins insisting on nesting at a particular place every year. And there was a story, of course, I'm not sure if this one's apocryphal, about a robin that nested on a train. And this train was a short commuter line, and it every time it would stay on the nest, come back, and when the train parked again, it would go on. It was really crazy. They're also fabulous parents, and they're one of the few birds that identifies a cowbird egg.
For the uninitiated, the cowbird is this little brown bird that lays its eggs in other birds' nests, leaving them the responsibility of raising and feeding an unexpected chick.
They can identify a cowbird egg, and they'll throw it out of the nest.
I get it. You're not in the mood at all to consider other options for the state bird, but what characteristics do you think are good for any state to consider when they're choosing a state bird?
One characteristic is that this is a bird that's accessible to everyone.
But then wouldn't the robin be the state bird of North America?
Well, you also have the blue jay, you have nuthatches, chickadees. The robin has so much on its resume. For one thing, it's a ubiquitous bird that all of us can see and study and enjoy. Other birds, such as the Kirtland's Warbler, that you can get your car plate. It's a beautiful little bird, but it has very limited range in Michigan. You have to go to very specific habitat. So whereas the robin is here. And I think the robin gets a bad rap because we do see it. But this is I call it the robinator because they're great predators. They really are.
The robin is the people's bird, our bird, a bird from Michigan. But not everyone thinks so. Now we present an argument in favor of the replacement of the robin with the Kirtland's Warbler. We're chirping with production assistant Eleanor Epperson today, and she's been digging into the great state bird debate for us. Eleanor, hi.
Hey, April.
I guess I always assumed that there was some really good, unique reason that the robin is our state bird. It feels like a totally innocuous choice to hold that title. What did you learn about why some folks take issue with it?
So I got in touch with someone who spends a lot of time around birds. Jen Owen was previously the director of the Michigan State Bird Observatory and the center coordinator for the Corey Marsh Ecological Center in Lansing. And Jen, kind of gave us both sides of the debate. She noted, like you said, that the robin is a bird that people recognize. They have a presence all across the state.
Robins are ubiquitous. They're in your backyard. They're, especially this time of year, you might see flocks of them in your yard. Some are year-round. They are what we call partial migrants. So they are some parts of the population, some individuals will be here year-round, and others will migrate. They're in the urban areas, they're in suburban areas, they're in the country. They're just an accessible species that people see.
But just like Jim, she ultimately would like to see a state bird that is more unique to the state of Michigan.
Personally, this is just my opinion, but I just feel, something that's unique to the state, something that's sort of an identifying feature. I think in some cases there's plants, trees that are really unique to that region, that state, and that becomes an identity for that state.
Okay, but Eleanor, why does the Kirtland's Warbler keep coming up when we talk about maybe a different state bird of all the non-robin birds that we might consider?
So Jen says that about 98% of the Kirtland's Warbler population lives here in Michigan in the summer. They migrate to the Bahamas in the winter. They roost in Michigan in the summer. And they used to be an endangered species, really, really endangered. And people in Michigan have done a lot of work here to protect them.
Their populations have been recovering because of actual management, because they need in the northern lower peninsula, they require sort of young stands of jack pine. And it's a special bird. People come to Michigan to see the Kirtland's Warbler. And it just seems like an opportunity to really highlight that bird, because I think when the bird is the state bird or we talk about it, it allows more sort of attention, which can have good implications for conservation. The bird is seeing some decline more recently, and that is because the jack pine stands have there's a sweet spot in terms of age, and so there's active management to try to recover those or manage those pines so that we can have increased population.
Eleanor, what can you tell us about why or how the robin became our state bird in the first place?
So this started almost 100 years ago. The state legislature passed a law back in 1931 to make the American robin our state bird. And they landed on that selection after a statewide poll was conducted by the Michigan Audubon Society. Based upon what we can read in news reports from the time, it was kind of a big deal, like a Great Depression version of the I Voted sticker contest from 2024. We also got a hold of someone at the Michigan Archives who told us a little bit about how the bird election went down.
Eleanor Epperson, production assistant here on Stateside. Eleanor, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we come back, that campaign story, the American robin hits the election trail.
They actually had reporters asking the Audubon Society for the latest election returns and the poll numbers.
And emerges victorious. Before we get into the great state bird debate, it is worth asking, why do we have a state anything at all? Like our state reptile is the painted turtle, our state tree, the white pine. Did you know we even have a state soil, Kalkaska sand? How did we get to picking things to represent our state?
That can actually be traced back to the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. There was an exhibit there called the National Garland of Flowers, and it included a flower that was chosen to represent each state. The one chosen for Michigan was the apple blossom.
That's Frances Heldt. She's an archivist with the Archives of Michigan.
And so, taking inspiration from that, the Michigan legislature, a few years later in 1897, officially made the apple blossom Michigan's state flower, and that was our first state symbol. Fast forward a little bit to the 1920s. The vogue by the 20s was for state birds. So by 1929, I think 13 other states had already declared a state bird, and so the thinking was, okay, time for Michigan. We need to have a state bird. We need to keep up with the rest of the country.
So whose idea was it to declare the robin the state bird back then?
Well, in 1929, the Michigan Audubon Society decided to hold an election, a special bird election, to popularly elect Michigan's favorite bird that they would then bring forward to the legislature and ask them to officially enact it as our state bird. So their goal with this was a little twofold. They wanted to educate people about Michigan birds and raise awareness about Michigan birds, but they obviously also wanted to find the bird that was the most beloved. What they actually said was, which bird gives the greatest joy to the majority of Michiganders?
So was this at all contentious? Were there other candidates in the Audubon election?
Yes. So because people loved this idea, it turned out to be a bigger deal than I think the society expected. It ran from April 1st to April 30th, 1929, and the Audubon Society nominated 21 bird candidates. But there was also a place for write-in candidates. Many schools actually did special units on Michigan birds right before and during the election so that students could learn about different ones before voting for their favorites, because in this election, children could also vote. Churches, organizations, and clubs also got involved. They did things like poll their memberships and then send in votes en masse. Newspapers loved this election, and they covered it incessantly throughout the state. They actually had reporters asking the Audubon Society for the latest election returns and the poll numbers. And they ran exposés on different birds, and they asked experts to weigh in on what bird they would choose and why. So definitely some campaigning happening.
Do we know how many people voted in the bird election?
Yes. All in all, almost 200,000 Michiganders voted.
And surprise, surprise, the robin is the clear winner.
The second place bird was the chickadee, which came in almost 10,000 votes behind the robin. But the president of the Michigan Audubon Society, Edith Munger, she was not happy with the result. And at first, she wanted to redo the election because she thought if people had a second chance, maybe they would do more like proper bird research.
Fake news. Fake news.
Well, we don't like this result. Do it again. I mean, she must have accepted the results eventually because there was no revote. she did end up bringing the robin forward to the legislature. And in 1931, as you were saying, the legislature did honor the result of the election, and they passed a legislative resolution recognizing robin redbreast as the state bird. And the resolution declared as its rationale that the robin is the best known and best loved of all the birds in the state.
Francis, what would it take if we did want to change our state bird? Let's if our listener's question is, has some merit to it, what would it take to get the legislature on board to make that kind of a change?
Yes. So basically, every symbol since the first three has had, as you've said, make its way through the legislature as a regular bill. So that means the proposal has to be introduced and amended and successfully passed through both chambers before being sent to the governor to sign. And because it's a regular bill, it's subjected to lobbying efforts by interest groups. And for some reason, state symbols are particularly contentious. So it's pretty difficult to get something passed all the way through that process to be an official state symbol. There's been a lot of failed proposals. I've seen a proposal for a state airplane, a state insect, a state fruit. There was a proposal to make Mackinac Island fudge the state sweet.
That has some legitimacy
Yes.
in my mind.
Yes. But in terms of the bird, there have been many efforts to change the bird specifically because the debate is just as strong today as it was 100 years ago. There are currently 3 major factions. The first is our incumbent, the American robin, and actually, one of the most interesting things I learned while doing this research, going back to the 1929 election, it took place in late winter and early spring, and it was reported that the chickadee was actually leading the votes until about the middle of April, when the robin returns to Michigan backyards, and it was only after that votes for the robin overtook the chickadee.
That's wild. So the migratory pattern kind of swung the election.
Yes. And so it's interesting to think if maybe they had timed the election for like fall or the middle of summer, would we have a completely different state bird right now? The second major camp is our runner-up in the Audubon Society's election, which is the black-capped chickadee. And the argument for the chickadee is it stays the course in Michigan all year round, and that makes it, a symbol of Michigan grit and perseverance, making it through the winter, even though it's such a cute, tiny little bird.
I like that a lot.
Yes. So the chickadee faction actually introduced some legislative proposals in 1992, 2000, and 2005. So 3 proposals,
Oh, wow.
but none of them were successful. And then the third camp, a bird that was not in the initial election, which is the Kirtland's Warbler. And this is the camp that is getting the most traction these days. And similar to the chickadee, there have been ultimately unsuccessful legislative proposals for the Kirtland's Warbler in 1976, 2003, and 2022, so fairly recently.
Kirtland's Warbler, always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Well, there was an effort to compromise there was 2 efforts to compromise here because we have 3 very divisive factions. So the first one was actually in 1976, after the first unsuccessful proposal for the Kirtland's Warbler. The legislature decided to throw it a bone, I guess, and they declared it Michigan's official bicentennial bird because the U.S. was celebrating its bicentennial in 1976. So it did do that, but it fell short of dethroning the robin as the official state bird. So, like you said, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But the other effort to compromise was in 2005. there were they were House bills that were introduced that would give some kind of state bird status to all three. So it proposed the chickadee as the state bird, the robin as the state migratory bird, and the Kirtland's warbler as the state songbird. But that also did not pass.
So, why is our state bird the American robin? Because we, the people, selected it, albeit nearly 100 years ago. You did all this research, Francis. I mean, do you have a bird in this fight? Who do you think our state bird should be?
That is a tough question. I do not want any hate from other factions, but I can really see the merit to the Kirtland's warbler. But I also can respect that the robin was elected by the people. But I also love how cute the chickadee is. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you. I'm trying to make everyone happy.
And you know what happens when you try to make everybody happy?
No one.
Nobody's happy.
No. I will say that my only suggestion is to rerun the bird election and see if we get the same result, because that would be conclusive if we got the robin again. And I would say not run it in the spring and see if we still get the robin.
You're on, Francis. The on-hand polls are open now. You can head to the link in this episode's description to place your own vote for a state bird. And there is, of course, a write-in option if you don't see your favorite. We'll be sharing those results next week. We looked into all the legislative bills that Francis mentioned with the hopes that we could talk with someone who voted against changing the state bird. But none of those bills made it past committee. Thanks again to listener Jim Bull for asking us about our state bird. Now we'd love to hear your Michigan City or music history questions. Ever wanted to know more about our state rock, state tree, or state flower? We're here to answer your questions. That's what this podcast is all about. Send them to us by filling out the form at the on-hand landing page at michiganpublic.org. Or you can just email us, onhand@michiganpublic.org. Today's episode of On Hand was produced by Ronia Cabansac. Other producers on the show are Mike Blank, Michelle Jokish-Polo, Mercedes Mejia, and April Van Buren. Our executive producer is Laura Weber-Davis. I'm April Baer. See you next time.